That's the first time in like 6 weeks that we haven't landed on shot first. I think the wheel hates us. I know. Did we just land on raise the roof?
Raise the roof.
The debt ceiling crisis, baby. It is a crisis that never needed to happen. And yet here we are again. I know a lot of liberals hate to acknowledge the fact that we did have the presidency and both chambers of Congress for 2 full years. Biden could have abolished the debt limit. They asked him to do it. And he said that getting rid of the statutory debt ceiling would be irresponsible. So what's way better right now is that we are going to negotiate all those entitlements that Biden has been threatening to chip away at for his 40-year career. So we're just exactly where we all knew we would be.
Isn't it a little suspicious that the Democrats always say they're not going to negotiate and then they give away the farm? Like they're the worst negotiators known to man, because at the end of the day, they really want these cuts too. Their donors want these cuts.
That's right.
It's all about keeping the class structure in place and enriching the rich and impoverishing the poor.
Right. Like we still haven't gotten rid of Trump's tax cuts. He's not the president anymore. I mean, it's amazing. I still see people blaming him for things when we've had a president. Like, I sort of joke about it, but apparently the least powerful position as a Democrat as the president of the United States just cannot do a single thing.
Well, I mean, possibly, but a second term president can do everything. If you just elect him a second time, he'll be able to get everything done that he didn't do the first time when he promised to do them.
Right. With both chambers of the House. And probably we're not going to even hang on to the Senate, I'm assuming, but I don't even know. All right. So do you want to talk about what we're cutting, or where do you want to go with this?
Yeah, we can go a million ways. So there's the Trump tax cuts.
$50 billion tax loophole that we could have at least gotten rid of that, right? But instead we're going to cut spending always, not the giveaway. 12 years of being the most responsible guy in the room. The seeds for what is now a negotiation over how much of the budget to cut were sown during Obama's grand bargain phase. And, here's also where, boy, I'm having a hard time with my Bernie. I'm like really sort of done. I can't even wear his t-shirts anymore. When Obama threatened to do that, Bernie said he was going to primary him. And Obama, at least in his language, was way closer to what Bernie said he hoped for, than anything Biden is. And the fact that Bernie has right away just lined up to endorse this disaster of a man is so heartbreaking.
I mean, don't get me started on Bernie. I love Bernie for his Medicare for All activism and the healthcare piece to him, and what he's done to raise awareness about all the income inequality needs we have. Yeah. But when it comes to COVID, he's been silent, and he's the literal goddamn chair of the Senate Health Committee, and he let the emergency declaration lapse. Nothing. What's he saying about these tax cuts? Is he saying, well, first we should at least repeal Trump's tax cuts, and that's some money?
Nope.
Where is he on the debt ceiling?
Nothing. And here's what could happen, right? Oh, this is so small, but okay. 200,000 children could be kicked off of Head Start. 640,000 families would lose rental assistance. 430,000 families face eviction. This is what's on the possible chopping block. Of course, there are going to be work requirements, which many of them I think were put in place under, what's his name? Biden. The work requirements on cash assistance that the president voted for in the 1990s are still the law today. He says that he will not touch Medicaid, although, who knows what will happen there. But he will evaluate whatever proposals Republicans bring to the table based on the principles of not accepting policies that push Americans into poverty, which is an enormous joke because he's helped construct many of those policies that have kept people completely beholden to their debt.
Right. And the reality is that they have ways to cut Medicaid without cutting Medicaid. By cutting the people that can qualify for Medicaid, like by instituting these work assistance, work requirements programs.
Right.
It
Which,
affects everybody. So
yeah.
we, they've already added them to SNAP benefits. There's a lot of stuff where there are now work requirements where there weren't. And the whole system is ridiculous. Like you can't get help raising your own kid, but you can get paid to help raise someone else's kid. And it's just a lot of ridiculous stuff going on there.
It's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape that is designed to make these policies fail and designed to have them fail for the people who need them the most. Most people,
the poor.
Yeah, to punish
all
the
these
poor.
Cuts are going to come from the poor people, poor and middle class. Struggle. Anyone struggling is going to be affected by them and the failure to raise the debt ceiling or eliminate the need to.
Right. Which is, yeah, again, it's a completely manufactured crisis that only comes up so that Republicans and Democrats can keep chipping away at policies and keep that will benefit their donors, their Wall Street donors. I mean, that's the whole deal. And just in case McCarthy doesn't get enough votes, we have a bunch of centrist Dems who are going to help save McCarthy in case he doesn't have enough Republican votes. They are willing to help him save his gavel. That's that's the vote blue no matter who crowd coming through for Speaker McCarthy.
I mean, the lines are so blurred now between both parties. I mean, if you take abortion off the table, which most Republicans don't want abortion on the table to the level that they know they've stepped in it essentially. Like it's going to cost them. It's the only thing keeping people voting Democrat is that one issue. Had they not repealed Roe versus Wade, it would be such a landslide for any Republican, Trump included.
Yeah. I mean, it might still be because you cannot keep saying that you're the party that believes in a woman's right to choose and then do nothing to Democratic administrations in a row to codify Roe and take this, hold us hostage for our bodily autonomy. I mean, it is just really horrific. And I think more and more people seem to be seeing through it, but they still, there's always that threat of how grotesque Trump and DeSantis and Mike Pence are.
Right. So if you're a centrist Dem who is corporate owned, you want the Republican Party to go as extreme radical right as possible so you can slide right yourself and your donors will be happy because you'll still be the sane alternative, even though you're basically a Reagan Republican from the 80s,
Yep. I mean, even Obama said he was a Reagan Republican. Like, that was Obama. That was 15 years ago, talking about himself as a Reagan Republican.
I mean, by today's standards, Reagan would be a progressive almost. I mean, he'd be in the progressive caucus.
Yeah, they'd let him in with Chantel Brown. Well, luckily, we've got AOC writing a sternly worded letter that there'll be a huge backlash if Biden concedes too much. I mean, look at that. It's not even if he concedes. Yeah. First of all, there'll be no backlash.
Not from her. They won't.
Yeah. Nothing. They can't even say like, we are not budging an inch. We have 600,000 people on the streets. We have tens of thousands of people, millions of people without healthcare, tens of thousands of people dying because they don't have healthcare. We don't have a living wage. We're not doing this. They can't say any of it. They're just saying basically that sternly worded letter, there'll be a backlash. What's her backlash? What has she ever, where has she ever used her power to get any concessions ever? What's the backlash?
There is none. And so the other quote on there was from Bowman, which was like, it makes us look like we don't know what we're doing. It makes us look weak and like we don't know what we're doing. Well, yeah, it makes you look weak and like you know what you're doing because you're co-signing this stuff at the end of the day every single time. Every time.
There's a really small clip of Ro Khanna. I just want to show because he's so close and yet he gets it 180 degrees wrong.
What if Nancy Pelosi had done that? What if we had said, unless you give us Medicare for all, unless you give us Green New Deal, President Trump, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling. Of course we don't do that because we're responsible, because we believe in compromise when it comes to the functioning of the government. They're acting irresponsible.
And a lot of your base probably would like it if y'all had done that. I mean,
Imagine thinking it's irresponsible to let our planet burn and to let millions of people die. Like it's so responsible. Thank you for compromising with the fascists across the aisle. How is that being the adult in the room?
Traditionally, Democrats caved to everything the Republicans put forward, and the Republicans put more vile legislation before them, and they cave and compromise.
Oh my God.
And none of this tradition and decorum and none of it ever gets reciprocated. It's just a fallacy that like both parties compromise. Republicans don't compromise on any Democratic initiatives ever. Not a single one in the fucking history of mankind have they compromised on.
Yeah.
We should show that clip on the economy. I like that guy. I mean, that kind of
all right, good.
Sums up a lot of the economy stuff.
And also,
why do we have so much poverty in America? I just heard one of the best responses to this question, so you have to watch the video.
Why is there so much poverty in America?
Because many of us profit from it. We exploit the poor in the labor markets, housing markets, and financial markets. Many of us benefit from that exploitation. We design a welfare state that gives the most to families that need it the least. And we subsidize affluence much more seriously than we alleviate poverty. And we build and continue to maintain segregated communities. We build walls around our affluence, and we hoard opportunities behind those walls. And that creates not only pockets of affluence, but pockets of concentrated poverty. So we have to tear down the walls. We found that landlords who are operating in very poor neighborhoods, these are neighborhoods with poverty rates in excess of 27%, don't just make more than landlords in affluent neighborhoods, but make double. They make double. And the reason is their housing expenses are much lower, but rents are not that much lower in poor neighborhoods. And I think that was a real revelation to us. And it opens up both policy possibilities, but also just this idea of, poor folks aren't living in high poverty neighborhoods because that's the only place they can afford. It's not super affordable to live there, actually. Right. They're often living in these places because they're the only ones that allow them to live there. Is it better to be a landlord in Soho than the South Bronx? Yes, it is. But in most other cities, think like Buffalo, not Boston, it's actually better to be a landlord profit-wise in poor neighborhoods rather than affluent ones.
I'm seeing, Wesley, your people still got to live even when income from stuff like SSI gets cut. That means private debt expansion. Yeah, I mean, our credit card debt in this country is astronomical at this point. People are paying rent on credit card. Sorry, I'm just sort of reading through some of your comments that you are all sharing. I'm physically disabled, qualify for it, but can't afford to go without income long enough to get approved. So that's exactly what all of these sort of means testing measures do. Oh my goodness. Yes. The ratchet effect is exactly what's happening. Sorry, you guys. I'm kind of catching up because there's so many comments and I don't want you to feel like we're, yeah. What a devastating state of affairs. And, at one point we had, well, first of all, I mean, how have we not had a minimum wage increase since George W. Bush? $7.25?
I mean, we had the opportunity to, as Rose said, do something disastrous and
so irresponsible.
Force $15 into the Build Back Better.
Yep.
Crap.
Yeah. And I mean, I know Bernie's now talking about $17. That's not enough. Like we need to be saying 25, knowing that we're not going to get any of it anyway, but change the whole dialogue. It's 15 is not enough. 17 is not enough. 25. I think just say 30 and then you can negotiate down to 25 because they're going to do it over years anyway. And they're not going to do it at all. I mean, how are they expecting people to be paying rent right now? Like what is happening?
73% of millennials living paycheck to paycheck. 73%. Teachers. Why are they
Yeah.
striking? Well, look at the cost of living. Just for inflation, they're making an average of $3,600 less than they did 10 years ago.
Yep.
And so it's getting to where people can't buy a house, and grocery store workers, a merger is happening. They're going to lose $300 million from a monopoly being formed right before our eyes.
Yep.
But the housing stuff, 40% of, here's Roe being a good guy again, of course, sharing
Those
something.
tweets, those good tweets.
Good tweet.
Don't do anything with the power you have as, an elected member of Congress. But yes, 40% of single family homes are owned by Blackstone and like Vanguard. And they pay in cash. So there's just absolutely no way, even if you have the money, you're never going to be able to compete.
You're not going to be able to compete, and you're not going to be able, even with great credit, you're not going to be able to get the loan because they're getting rid of, they're not, because of inflation now,
right?
Because they're raising the interest rates. Even the interest rate, if you can afford it, you can't get the loan in a lot of cases.
Right.
So the people that can show up with cash, they're banks, and they're buying up the housing market. They're making them all into rentals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we know that owning your home is the fastest way out of poverty into generational wealth. And so that opportunity is being removed from millennials. And millennials, we just showed you, 73% live paycheck to paycheck. How can they afford a down payment on a house when the housing market is shrinking incredibly fast?
Right. And they are overwhelmed by their own student debt. And they're being told by the boomer generation to, it's because of your fancy phones and your avocado toast. You cannot save your way out of this when you're making so little money. The cost of living is just astronomical. Just because obviously, as you all know, I am married to a writer, and, I was on the picket line a few times last week, and obviously he's there every day. I just thought that this was really fascinating, that this is what the writers are asking for. If they got everything that they were asking for, it would cost the studios who make $30 billion in profit every year, this, like the smallest percentage, 0.091%, is what it would cost Disney. It would be 0.214% from Netflix and 0.108% Warner Brothers. So such a small percentage of what their profits are. And since the writers went on strike 3 weeks ago, Disney has lost almost $16 billion, Universal almost $8 billion, and Paramount $5.5 billion. They could have just ended the strike. And the only reason that they're not is, again, it's disciplining labor and letting the writers know that they're completely expendable. And the only reason I'm highlighting that because I have a personal connection to it, but that is, as we've talked about for the last 2 years, every single industry, whether it's Amazon workers or truck drivers or railroad workers or grocery workers, like they are trying to let everyone know that you are completely replaceable.
And you have to think about their long-term profits. They're looking at, hey, if we cave to this fight, even a teeny bit now, it could really hurt us down the road because we haven't mapped out how to screw the employees for 50 years by denying them this and changing this norm to where writers are no longer this creative force behind our projects. They're just like a little worker bee.
Right.
And
they're taking away all
rights.
Right. They're going to try to keep people doing the grunt work and put the creativity over to the AI. I mean, it's so backwards the way they are trying to do this. But, even like I just saw, almost every supermarket, grocery store, anywhere I go now has the automated or like self-service aisles. And now they have tip jars on those self-service aisles because we're always having to compensate for the CEOs not paying their employees enough, which is why there's tipping in the first place. Honestly, I mean, in Europe, you don't, and I mean, I was a server for a decade. I relied on tips. I tip well. I believe in tipping, but like that shouldn't be the way. We should not have to subsidize management's lack of paying a living wage to their employees.
No, and when I get gas, the gas station right next to the freeway, the one I use every single time I get gas, I go in and grab Gatorades a lot of times because I'm doing stuff outside and in the heat, so it's a regular kind of thing. And the employees there are training people to use the kiosk instead of them, and they're going to put themselves out of work. There's a kiosk now where you go in, you put your gas thing in, you even scan the items that you buy. So gas stations are going to thin down to just one employee in there.
Yep.
And the workers are pushing it because what are you going to do? Your boss says you got to train people to use this machine, but it's replacing you.
It's replacing you. And I think probably we're all in the same place that I think there'd be something really nice about automating some of the worst kind of labor, but still give people an opportunity to thrive and live a dignified life. Like they still have to make money somehow, whether it's a UBI or whatever it is. I don't think it's horrible to have some of the most like mining
Exactly.
or whatever, right?
Sure.
But it's never that. It's always at the expense of the working class.
Well, and it just elevates, it's always the working class that suffers. But like that gas station attendee now that used to just sit behind the counter and take your cash and have a little exchange. So they're out on the floor telling me to use the machine because they're hustling to stock inventory. And they're taking on other tasks. They're probably now the person responsible for cleaning the toilets, where they had somebody who would come in every once in a while and do it.
Right.
And it's just making things worse, obviously. And it's not that technology is bad. It's just that we need to fight for some of these gains to come to everyone else, not just the rich people who are profiting off of the labor. Because you're abusing labor more and more with AI, which is why the writer's strike is so important.